When we lie, cheat, or choose ourselves over others, the choice feels entirely free in the exact moment we make it. There is no cash register at the moment of gossip. No one asks for a credit card before we indulge in envy or hate. In the short term, these actions can even feel pleasurable or harmless, heavily reinforcing the illusion that we got away with something. This absence of an immediate price tag is a dangerous deception. It blinds us to the reality that a highly consequential transaction has still occurred. The true weight of that transaction only surfaces weeks, months, or even years after the fact. This animated diagram illustrates the concept of a delayed ledger. It begins perfectly flat when a choice is made, but slowly curves into a steep exponential red downward trend as time goes on, showing how initial, isolated actions mathematically compound. We eventually see this compounding debt in the physical world, through severed relationships, paralyzing internal shame, and a quiet distance from God. Avoiding an upfront cost does not mean the action was free. It simply means the eventual payment has compounded into a spiritual debt we cannot possibly manage. The Book of Romans describes this specific mechanic as a wage. Sin functions exactly like labor that legally demands a final payout. Looking at this visualization of the ledger, the required payout is total systemic failure, death. The accumulated red debt maxes out the graph and instantly converts into a terminal flatline. This terminal penalty cannot be reversed or negotiated. We cannot balance out the deficit by simply trying to do a few good deeds after the fact. We are trapped in an impossible economic paradox. We freely incurred a massive debt that now requires our very lives to settle. The intervention of the cross is the ultimate historical act of someone else stepping in to take on a lethal burden. The extreme, violent measure required to pay for sin, Jesus willingly giving his life, is the ultimate evidence of its severity. God did not casually erase, ignore, or excuse the debt. Instead, he absorbed the terminal penalty himself to mathematically satisfy the ledger. Here, the flatlining terminal red line is struck by a descending bright external vector. The lethal debt is absorbed, and the graph resets perfectly to a stable, neutral zero. The cross forces us to hold two shocking truths simultaneously. Sin is far more destructive than we dare admit, yet God's love is vastly greater than we could ever imagine. Knowing the devastating cost that was paid, the practical question becomes, how do we stop generating new debt in our lives? Our standard reaction is to obsessively monitor our own behavior, using the threat of punishment to force ourselves to follow the rules. This try-harder methodology always fails because it only focuses on suppressing external actions while completely ignoring the internal desires of the heart. Relying on willpower fueled by constant fear is an exhausting and ultimately unsustainable defense against temptation. The Book of John outlines a very different approach, establishing a precise chronological order for Christian transformation. A deep love for God must precede obedience. A heart captivated by God's love gradually loses its appetite for sin. This doesn't mean we become perfect overnight, but our direction changes. We begin to choose what pleases God because we treasure Him more than the temporary pleasures that sin offers. Obedience is no longer a rigid, fearful duty to a cosmic rulebook. It becomes a protective instinct toward a relationship we treasure above all else. The ultimate defense against sin is not policing our actions. It's falling so deeply in love with the God who first loved us that our hearts are gradually reoriented toward a new way of living.